FSU's famous Jameis is benched for a half. The NFL has multiple stars out. We'll update you on all of them, plus injuries, predictions, and fantasy football. Play to Win is being brought to you by the Southeastern Nissan dealers and Mellow Mushroom Pizza Bakers.
Welcome to Play to Win with former Falcons All-Pro defensive end Chuck Smith. Game analysis with Adam Brown. Fantasy Football League previews by Nikki Williams. Play to Win expert Jeffrey Schechter. Injury updates with Dr. Andrew Lalage. And your host, Atlanta sports veteran Bob Neal.
Our college football report is being brought to you by Mall of Georgia, Chrysler Dodge Jeep, and Kia Mall of Georgia. All right, Dr. Lalage and Jeffrey will be along a little bit later, but on the set we have Adam Brown, Nikki Williams, and former All-Pro Chuck Smith, who's going to analyze the games
Good to be here.
as usual for us. And the first thing we're going to do in our college football report is talk about, of course, that big FSU-Clemson game. It's the biggest game in the ACC, one of the top games in the country this week. And, of course, you've already heard the news. Famous Jameis Winston, the Florida State quarterback, will be benched for the first half for making obscene remarks on campus. Now you say, well, he's just being a college kid. Well, he is a college kid, but he's also the quarterback of the #1 team in the nation. So everything we talk about this game has to be skewed on the fact that famous Jameis Winston is not going to be playing against Clemson in the first half. But let's get started talking about the game, and let's go to Nikki Williams. Your Nikki's notes always set us up.
He is just a baby, Bob.
Yes.
He really is. We forget about that sometimes. I really think this game is going to define how we look at both of these teams throughout the rest of the season. A lot to learn from it. We cannot ignore FSU's firepower. These guys, 1,232 total yards in the last couple of games with Clemson. Clemson's got this musical quarterback situation that could confuse FSU greatly. They've got Stout and Watson that they can throw in, making them have to prepare a little more. And both of these teams are going to have to be by land and not air. Neither of them have great offensive lines. They're going to have to work on their ground game.
All right, and Adam Brown, let's go inside the numbers.
Well, a couple things stand out for me this week. One, Clemson is the least penalized team in the country. 4 penalties all season long so far. I really think if they keep their composure this week, they're going to have success. Also, on the flip side, Florida State. Florida State's 127th out of 128 teams in FBS on getting up the field on third down. That's a key stat, and Florida State really needs to get better at that department.
Yeah, it's interesting, Chuck. You think #1 team, you'd think they'd be better defensively on third down conversions. But I want to go to you, away from the numbers and away from the notes, about the feeling of this game and the X's and O's on it. How do you feel about it, Clemson at FSU? And I want to start with the fact that Jameis Winston's out.
Right, Jameis Winston out, and if you're FSU right now, you got to come in there and try to run the ball. That's got to be the philosophy for Florida State. You got to protect yourself. Vic Beasley will be a heat-seeking missile for Clemson, Bob, because, I mean, that's part of it. You got to expect to have a tight game around halftime until Jameis gets back in.
All right, Clemson loses to Georgia, but now Clemson is going down to beat, they think, Florida State at Tallahassee. Can Clemson win down there?
Oh, yeah, they can win, and that's if they use that same philosophy that Jeremy Pruitt used when it came to Georgia, what they did against Clemson. Double gap barrel blitzes right inside the A-gap, Bob. There'll be heat-seeking missiles coming. So when you think about the Georgia game, Cole Stout's going to have to revisit that because that's exactly what Florida State's going to do.
Now it's time for the feature game. The college football showdown of the week, brought to you by the Georgia Lottery. All right, and we go to Alabama hosting Florida. Florida struggled, had to win in triple overtime, 36-30 over Kentucky. Alabama's been rolling over their cupcakes to get started, with the exception of that first game with West Virginia. Alabama's favored in the game, but let's break it down, beginning with Nikki's notes.
Yeah, both of these teams are undefeated. Who's calling that a big win? When Florida is beating Kentucky and anyone's calling that a big win, you know they're lagging. I think it was just the Florida papers. Florida is only a big deal to Florida this year, is what I think. I don't know if this is the marquee matchup that it used to be.
Yeah, I think it makes it an interesting matchup, however, because it's early in the season. We don't know a lot about the game yet or the teams yet, but this will help when we go inside the numbers.
Inside the numbers, very simple. Florida's #2 in the country in turnover margin at +7. Alabama's -2.
All right, Chuck, break it down for us, X's and O's.
Bob, Jeff Driscoll for Florida is supposed to have been the next coming of, let's be honest, a Peyton Manning type of quarterback there, but hadn't lived up to the expectations. Because the first thing is his accuracy. Doesn't throw the deep ball accurate, but this week, if they're going to win this game, he's going to have to find his receivers downfield. For Alabama, Blake Sims just has to manage the game for Alabama. He's done a good job so far, and he's on a short leash. But I like what Lane Kiffin's done. Run the ball and let Blake manage the game. That's Alabama's philosophy this week.
All right, now let's go to Jeffrey the Edge Schechter to pick the games for you on Play to Win.
Alabama 14.5 over a very mediocre Florida team looks like a cheap number to me. Alabama's problems lay down the road when they play the SEC West teams, but they should cover the 14.5 points against a very mediocre Florida team. LSU was given a gift week 1 against Wisconsin. I have a little song for Mississippi State. It's now or never. Prescott may be the best quarterback in the SEC. LSU is not that good. Take the 10 with Mississippi State. Florida State's having a little problem handling success. They struggle with Oklahoma State. Very lucky to get out of there alive. Now the quarterback's not playing. There may be a little problems in Seminole land. I think Clemson gives them a game. Take the 17 with the Tigers.
All right, there you go. Jeffrey the Edge Schechter and his predictions. We come back in just a moment with the hometown team report, and Dr. Andrew Lalage will be along later on Play to Win.
Kia Mall of Georgia is building a new dealership to serve you, Atlanta. We're exploding the old building and the competition with the biggest savings of the year during our construction sale. Get a new 2015 Kia Sorento LX starting at only $19,997. Find a 2015 Kia Optima LX starting at only $17,997. All inventory drastically reduced, and lenders are standing by with a 100% loan approval goal. Kia Mall of Georgia, 2.5 miles west of the Mall of Georgia, or online at lovemykia.com.
Right after I got hurt in my car wreck, the other guy's insurance company offered to fix my car, but they only offered me $750 for my injuries, and then they wanted me to sign this.
Don't sign anything until you've talked to me. I'm Attorney John Foy, the Strong Arm. You may be giving up tens of thousands of dollars by signing the insurance company's release form. Call me.
That same day, the insurance company said they'll fix my car and offered me this check for $600.
Don't take that check. Let me get you the money you deserve. Call on the Strong Arm.
The 2014 Nissan Altima with up to 270 horses, blind spot warning, and advanced drive assist. Choose the 38 MPG Altima and save up to $2,500. Nothing beats an Altima, except another Altima. Innovation that excites. Shop ChooseNissan.com.
Boom, there it is. I'm richer than rich. I want the life of a superstar. I'm making the switch. Signing autographs like a starter for real. Making fly new commercials from my mega shoe deal. Rolling in the locker room, I'm one of the crew. You used to take me to the bench, boy, now what you gonna do? I hit the player payday, my heyday. So much money raining on me that the banks are crying Mayday.
One scratch and you could be living the player's life. Play the Atlanta Falcons Player Payday Scratcher, new from the Georgia Lottery.
Hometown Team Report is being brought to you by Mellow Mushroom Pizza Bakers, bringing a higher order of pizza to Atlanta for 40 years.
Well, let's get started. It's the first big test for Georgia Tech going on the road to Virginia Tech. How about Inside Nikki's notes?
Yeah, they've got to actually play football for once. We can say that they're 3-0 right now, but they haven't really had to play a game, and Virginia Tech really needs to make a comeback. Will the real Hokies please stand up? Are these going to be the guys that beat Ohio State, or are these going to be the guys that lost to East Carolina? You never know what's going to show up with them this season.
All right, how about going inside the numbers for us, Adam Brown?
Virginia Tech is 18th in the country in rushing defense. What's Tech's bread and butter? Running the football. It's going to be a great matchup. Tech's run defense versus Tech's offense.
Yeah, so you're going with Tech also.
I'm going with Tech also.
We awful.
I didn't say I was going with Tech.
Paul Johnson's 1-5 against Virginia Tech and Frank Beamer. How do you see this game?
Well, I see it, Bob. The bottom line is if Georgia Tech can throw the ball, we talked about Justin Thomas adding passing to his game. Can you believe Georgia Tech threw for 188 yards? But here's the deal. If Georgia Tech's going to think about winning, they're going to have to capitalize on a weak Virginia Tech defense. Now, I'm not quite sold on, right now Georgia Tech running on this Virginia Tech team, but Georgia Tech's going to have to throw the ball to win.
All right, let's talk about the University of Georgia. Georgia's still hurting over the loss to South Carolina, but Georgia gets Troy this week. Not much of a game. Troy is 0-3, and they haven't even played anybody, and they're 0-3. So Georgia has a chance to get well. And Nick Chubb, by the way, the running back who's number 2 for Georgia, has a fractured left thumb. He may or may not be in the game, but I don't think it matters. Let's get started with Nikki's notes.
Maybe a little ointment for Georgia's wounds. It's going to be a great learning experience either way. The young pups hopefully get some playing time, and we'll work on Hudson Mason's confidence. I really think this will be a great game for that.
All right, Adam, give us some more background on the numbers of this game.
Nikki says confidence. Absolutely 100% confidence this week. Georgia's had 8 plays of 30 yards or more so far this year. They're going to have 8 plays in the first half of 30 yards or more this week. They're going to get confidence this week on offense.
All right, and Chuck, I want you to say, what is Georgia going to accomplish? Obviously, they should beat Troy, but what are they going to try to do coming off that loss and getting ready before they get down the road with some tougher games?
Well, I think we want to see, Bob, I want to see a little more technique from the Georgia defensive line. I like what Jeremy Pruitt's bringing. I love D-line coach Tracy Rocker. I need to see Georgia using their hands more when it comes to the pass rush aspect of the game. It showed up last week versus South Carolina. They need to work on that versus Troy.
All right, and now it's time for Jeffrey the Edge Schechter to give us the picks. Jeffrey, what do you got?
Take Tech, and it's a lock. I'd like Virginia Tech to beat Georgia Tech, to give the 8. Georgia's a 40-point favorite. I don't pick games with that kind of a point spread, but Georgia fans can feel very good that they should have a nice lead in the fourth quarter, and they won't have to worry about Coach Rick making any decisions. So,
okay.
Enjoy the game.
Jeffrey the Edge.
Reminds me of my uncle sitting at home at the cookout calling games. I like it.
He's the uncle.
That's the uncle.
He's
Uncle
the
Jeff.
angry uncle.
The rude
Mark Rick.
uncle.
You hear that, Coach Rick?
Angry.
That's Jeffrey. All right, we'll be back in just a moment as we continue with Play to Win.
Why can't I have a slice of yours?
You're a cartoon. You can only have cartoon pizza.
It's not fair.
Look, this pie is 100% real, and you're colored ink. It's physics, man.
Well, can you buy me a beer?
I can buy you a cartoon beer. Are you single?
It's a ride.
Everyone wants real mellow mushroom pizza because our pies use premium meats and cheeses, fresh veggies, and spring water dough baked with wheat goodness. Mellow mushroom, a higher order of pizza.
Your life moves fast, so when your plumbing goes bad, we know you want it fixed fast. I'm Brian Estes, inviting you to see what we can provide with our plumbing services. We're dedicated to the same high standards of quality we've held ourselves to since 1949. From leak repairs to water pressure, from water heaters to toilet issues. Estes is dependable, proven, and ready to help. Call Estes and we'll fix it at the speed of life.
We're Estes Services. We'll fix it at the speed of life.
If the car was invented today, it would run on the most affordable energy source available. It would charge overnight. Every morning, you'd wake up with a full tank ready to go. If the car was invented today, it would be the 100% electric Nissan Leaf. With over 800 million gas-free miles driven and automatic HOV lane access, the question isn't why electric, it's why gas.
The 100% electric Nissan Leaf. Nissan, innovation that excites. Now get a 2015 Nissan Leaf for $199 a month.
Today's Player Medical Report is being brought to you by Piedmont Healthcare, now a certified member of the MD Anderson Cancer Network.
And now an analysis of some key injuries in the National Football League from the Chief Medical Officer of the Radiology Group and the creator of InsideInjuries.com, Dr. Andrew Lalage.
Let's start with the first athlete. Let's start with Reggie Bush. He has had multiple knee injuries in 2012, 2013, and now the same knee is injured in 2014. This kills running backs. We put it into the computer, and he has come out with a 50% performance. He will be 50% effective. Jamal Charles, everyone loves Jamal Charles, but he has just sustained a high ankle sprain and a mild concussion this year with multiple other injuries of his lower extremity. It will make him very difficult to be effective on the field this week. If he is activated, he'll also likely be only at 50% effectiveness. Carson Palmer, he sat out the first game. The second game, he may be activated. However, he has a pinched nerve in his shoulder with a shoulder injury and an AC joint sprain. He will also be likely 60% effective this week. I would not recommend starting these players this week, Bob.
We're going to come back in just a moment with Adam Brown's Fantasy Football. Stay with us on Play to Win.
The September savings event is going on now at Mall of Georgia Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram. Save $10,000 off the 2014 Ram Crew Cab, starting at only $25,999. A 2014 Dodge Charger is $9,000 off MSRP. And during Chrysler's Great American Drive event, get $6,000 off MSRP on a 2015 Chrysler 200. Savings all September long at Mall of Georgia Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram or online at yourdodge.com.
Today's injury report is brought to you by John Foy and Associates. If you've been injured in an accident, be sure to call John Foy, the strong arm.
Going into the third week, already a lot of injuries building in the National Football League. But here's the NFL report on some key injuries. Kelvin Benjamin. Notice Wes Welker. He had a concussion. Remember, he was suspended 4 games. He will play for Denver this week. A.J. Green, Jordan Cameron. Cameron is out with his shoulder. Eddie Lacy is probable with a concussion. And Mark Ingram had surgery on his hand this week, and he is out for this week. And that is the injury report brought to you by John Foy and Associates.
The week's fantasy report, who's hot and who's cold, brought to you by Estes Services, your man for all seasons, serving Metro Atlanta since 1949.
All right, now time for Adam Brown's fantasy football. Let's start as usual with the quarterbacks and who's hot.
Right.
And last week, I know one thing, Andrew Luck wasn't that hot.
He had a decent fantasy points week, but not a great fantasy points week. This week, he's going against Jacksonville's defense, who's 25th in the league in stopping the pass.
All right, let's go to the running backs. Who's hot here? You've got 3 guys listed.
Arian Foster, everybody knows Arian Foster's a great running back, but he's going up against a terrible New York Giants defense who are giving up 18.9 fantasy points a week.
Notice a lot of running backs are getting banged up or out, like in the Adrian Peterson case. Let's go now to the wide receivers.
Sammy Watkins had a great week last week. He's going to have a great week this week, with San Diego giving up 26.1 fantasy points per game to opposing receivers.
All right, this is easy for you, Damon, who's hot. What's a little tougher is who's cold and your sleepers. So let's start, first of all, with going who's cold if you're thinking about your fantasy team.
Lots of people are saying that Cam Newton's going to be hot this week. I think he's going to be cold, considering the fact that Pittsburgh's defense is only giving up 198 yards passing per game.
All right, you've been really great. 2 out of 2 weeks in the previous shows on who's a good sleeper in fantasy football.
This sleeper week, I like Ryan Tannehill versus Kansas City. They're playing at home in Miami. Kansas City's giving up 20.8 fantasy points per game to opposing quarterbacks and 5 passing touchdowns in 2 games.
All right, Adam, you've been doing well on this. I hope you're listening to this guy when you're putting your fantasy teams out there. Adam Brown's Fantasy Football. We'll be back in a moment to talk NFL, some key games this week. Stay with us on Play to Win.
Right after I got hurt in my car wreck, the other guy's insurance company offered to fix my car. But they only offered me $750 for my injuries. And then they wanted me to sign this.
Don't sign anything until you've talked to me. I'm Attorney John Foy, the strong arm. You may be giving up tens of thousands of dollars by signing the insurance company's release form. Call me.
Their insurance company offered to fix my car and offer me this check for $1,000.
Don't take that check. Let me get you the money you deserve. Call on the strong arm.
Call Attorney John Foy, the strong arm.
Your life moves fast, so when you want it fixed, we know you want it fixed fast. I'm Tommy Estes, and we'll fix it at the speed of light. Go to EstesAir.com and see what we can do for you with our heating and air residential services. Your factory authorized Carrier dealer is dependable, proven, and ready to help. Save energy and money with a dual fuel system from Estes Services.
We're Estes Services. We'll fix it at the speed of light.
The NFL Report is brought to you by the Greater Atlanta Nissan dealers. Innovation that excites.
All right, time to talk a little bit of NFL now with Nikki Williams and Chuck Smith. And by the way, the Falcons, of course, played on Thursday night. Atlanta now getting ready to go to Minnesota on September 28th. Let's get started with one of our 2 key games that we're talking about this week. And, of course, Jeffrey's going to pick them in a moment. But let's do this one. Pittsburgh at Carolina. And obviously for the Carolina part, Greg Hardy is not playing in the game. But, Nikki, why don't you get us started with your notes?
Oh, but Carolina looked solid last week, and so did Cam Newton against the Lions. They were on fire. You throw Kelvin in the mix, what they do, they just threw that rookie wide receiver from FSU on a treadmill. He looks totally different, and he is delivering. I love the team, Cam to Kelvin.
How do you see this game? Pittsburgh and Carolina.
Well, how I see this game, it starts with Pittsburgh protection. They've been blocking with 5 this week. Expect the Steelers to have 6 because Ben Roethlisberger is under fire, and I expect Carolina to send all kind of pressure after him. It's just really important for Pittsburgh to protect. They'll have a chance to win. If Carolina gets to him, they're going to win this game.
Okay, next game we're talking about Seattle-Denver, another big game in the NFL. Seattle had trouble with San Diego, of course, and Denver and Peyton Manning. So let's get that one started with Nikki's notes. How do you see it, Nikki?
Rarely is Denver the underdog and Peyton Manning, but they are this time when they head back to Seattle for this Super Bowl matchup. Is the soup bad? Like you said, San Diego popped that Super Bowl bubble. I'm not sure which way that is going to go. Denver's defense looking much better. DeMarcus Ware, the big difference, maybe. I mean, what do you think, Chuck?
Well, I had a chance to spend time with Jack Del Rio, Denver's defensive coordinator, and Dan Quinn at Seattle last year. And both of them, they know the number one thing that they want to do is beat up the quarterback. Take the head off the snake, the body will die. That's their philosophy. Each one of those coordinators are going to send all kind of different pressure to try to beat up the quarterback. That is both teams' philosophy.
All right, Wes Welker, by the way, is back with Denver. How effective we don't know. Remember, he had a concussion, but then he was suspended for 4 games. And speaking of that, there have been several NFL players in off-the-field news. You've heard about it all week long, getting involved in becoming exempt and suspended from their teams because of off-the-field activities. And, of course, think of Adrian Peterson, Jonathan Dwyer, Greg Hardy, even Brandon Marshall up in Chicago has been accused of some domestic violence. That's yet to be seen. My question for you, Chuck, is how does this affect the other players on the teams where these guys are suspended or out?
Well, the first thing, Bob, is these guys are starters. It affects the game planning when you look at the situation that both teams are in. The distractions are huge in the NFL. And to me, the other players are thinking, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen? It's just been a crazy week.
All right, and speaking of that, it's time for, speaking of crazy, John Kincaid from 680 The Fan. John, we love you. We love you. Wouldn't kid you if we didn't love you. John Kincaid from 680 The Fan has our 68 seconds with 680, and it's about that very issue.
So let me get this straight. The Minnesota Vikings were offended by what Adrian Peterson did, enough to keep him off the field last Sunday. But then they decided on Monday that he would be back on the field this Sunday, until the NFL advertiser said he would not be back on the field, so now he's deactivated. Okay, what about the Baltimore Ravens? They were totally consistent, right? Ray Rice gets no suspension, then he gets a 2-game suspension, then he gets suspended for an indefinite leave. I can't keep it all straight. And then we've got the Carolina Panthers, where their owner, Jerry Richardson, was bawling in front of the cameras saying, how could you ever think we're soft on justice? And then they're letting Greg Hardy play week 1, and then they deactivate him for week 2, and then he's practicing again for week 3. It makes my head spin. Then you've got the San Francisco 49ers with Ray McDonald and his pregnant fiancée. She's injured in a domestic violence incident, and he's yet to be sat down. Consistent needs to be the word in the NFL when it comes to discipline. And unfortunately, in today's day and age, it isn't. Back to you guys in the studio.
All right, Kincaid says it all in 68 seconds. Now it's time for Jeffrey to pick our games today. Jeffrey, how do you see them against the spread?
Carolina defense is as good as any defense in the NFL. The offense came on strong in the second half last week. Pittsburgh, after being up 27-3 against Cleveland, has had 6 terrible quarters of football. A lot of people, including myself, have picked Pittsburgh to go a long way. We're going to find out this week how good they are. Take the 3.5 with the Steelers. Seattle got picked apart last week by Phillip Rivers, and yours truly had picked San Diego. They're going to be extra mad this week when Denver comes to town. Denver's going to try and regain some of the self-respect after being humiliated in the Super Bowl last year. But I think Seattle's going to give them a good beat. Give the 4.5 with Seattle.
All right, Jeffrey the Edge Schechter with a little shameless self-promotion. Way to go, the Edge. We're going to come back in just a moment with more of the Edge on the Lightning Round on Play to Win.
The 2014 Nissan Altima with up to 270 horses, blind spot warning, and advanced drive assist. Choose the 38 MPG Altima and save up to $2,500. Nothing beats an Altima, except another Altima. Innovation that excites. Shop ChooseNissan.com.
Wizard, can you make me real so I can eat real mellow mushroom pizza instead of cartoon pizza?
Stand back. Here we go. Alakazam!
Wiggity stickity poof! I'm still a cartoon.
Then that'd be a no.
Everyone wants real mellow mushroom pizza because our pies use premium meats and cheeses, fresh veggies, and spring water dough baked with wheat goodness.
Wiggity stickity poof.
Mellow mushroom, a higher order of pizza.
Boom, there it is. I'm richer than rich. I want the life of a superstar. I'm making the switch. Signing autographs like a starter for real. Making fly new commercials from my mega shoe deal. Rolling in the locker room, I'm one of the crew. You used to take me to the bench, boy, now what you gonna do? I hit the player payday, my heyday. So much money raining on me that the banks are crying mayday.
One scratch and you could be living the player's life. Play the Atlanta Falcons Player Payday Scratcher, new from the Georgia Lottery.
If the car was invented today, it would run on the most affordable energy source available. It would charge overnight. Every morning, you'd wake up with a full tank ready to go. If the car was invented today, it would be the 100% electric Nissan Leaf. With over 800 million gas-free miles driven and automatic HOV lane access, the question isn't why electric, it's why gas.
The 100% electric Nissan Leaf. Nissan, innovation that excites. Now get a 2015 Nissan Leaf for $199 a month.
We never get enough of Jeffrey the Ed Schechter. Time for the lightning round.
East Carolina gave South Carolina all they can handle, went to Blacksburg, defeated Virginia Tech, give the 2, go with East Carolina. Michigan stinks. Utah is always a live underdog. Take the 5 with Utah. San Francisco hasn't looked that good the first 2 weeks of the year. Take Arizona with 3. Buffalo is probably the most improved team in the NFL. Their defense is better. They have the most speed on offense, but there's something about the Chargers. Phillip Rivers is going to keep the ball away from Buffalo. Take San Diego into 2.5 points. The Browns. Baltimore goes to Cleveland with a 1.5 point favorite. They go home a loser. If they keep making use of the 2.5, 3 point favorite over bad teams, I'm going to keep going with them. The Giants are a bad team. These are 2 teams going the opposite way. Houston's the best bet on the board.
All right, on behalf of Adam Brown, Nikki Williams, and Chuck Smith, I'm Bob Neal. See you next week on Play to Win.
Play to Win has been brought to you by John Foy and Associates and Kia Mall of Georgia and Mall of Georgia Chrysler Dodge Jeep.